The courtroom air felt electric, thick with anticipation and the cloying scent of Victoria's perfume, my perfume, the one James had given me for our 10th anniversary. I stood across from her, my hands trembling inside my purse where I'd hidden it. The cool metal against my fingertips was both terrifying and comforting. I could just pull the trigger right now, and it would all be over. I thought, watching Victoria Hayes preen in my sapphire blue Dior dress, a birthday gift from James. The dress that had made me feel like royalty when he'd zipped it up, whispering that I was his queen, his everything. Now it hugged Victoria's curves like it was made for her, the diamond clasp at the nape of her neck catching the harsh fluorescent lights. She turned, feeling my gaze, and smiled, a predatory curl of perfectly painted lips. "I didn't just take your husband, Emily," she whispered, leaning close as she passed my table. "I took everything that was yours, even this dress." My lawyer, Morgan Williams, squeezed my arm. "Stay calm, Emily. She's trying to provoke you. Don't give her the satisfaction." But Morgan didn't know about what was in my purse. She didn't know how close I was to ending this nightmare once and for all. I looked across the courtroom at James, my husband of 15 years, sitting beside his shark of a lawyer, Thomas Bennett. James wouldn't meet my eyes. He hadn't properly looked at me in months, not since I'd discovered the truth. Judge Eleanor Montgomery entered, and the bailiff called for all to rise. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stood. This was it. After months of James freezing our accounts, spreading rumors about my mental health, and systematically trying to strip me of everything I'd helped build, we were about to hear the verdict. In the matter of Blackwell versus Parker, Judge Montgomery began, her voice stern and uncompromising. "Having reviewed all evidence presented by both parties, I am prepared to rule on the division of assets." Victoria turned to look at me again, triumph gleaming in her eyes. James finally raised his head, a small smirk playing on his lips. I slid my hand deeper into my purse, my fingers wrapping around not a gun, but my phone. "Before you continue, Your Honor," I said, my voice stronger than I expected, "I have something the court needs to see." All eyes turned to me. Morgan looked startled. This wasn't part of our strategy. I pulled out my phone and pressed send on the message I'd prepared. "I've just forwarded evidence of James Blackwell's illegal financial activities to everyone in this room." Phones began buzzing throughout the courtroom. Judge Montgomery's clerk handed her a tablet. James shot to his feet, face ashen. "What the hell are you doing?" he hissed. Before anyone could react further, the heavy oak doors of the courtroom burst open. A tall figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, commanding immediate attention. "I apologize for the interruption." "Your Honor," said a voice I hadn't heard in 15 years, a voice I'd never expected to hear again. "My name is Nathan Sterling, and James Blackwell stole everything from me, including this woman." The courtroom erupted in chaos as the bailiff moved toward Nathan. Judge Montgomery banged her gavel repeatedly. "Order, I will have order in my court." I stared at Nathan, unable to believe he was really standing there. Nathan Sterling, my college sweetheart, the man I'd loved before James, the man who was supposed to have died in a boating accident a decade ago. And then everything went black. 48 hours earlier. I once believed I had everything. Our penthouse overlooking Central Park was featured in Architectural Digest. My closet held couture that most women only dreamed of touching. The art collection I'd curated, once my passion, before James convinced me to give up my career, was valued at 8 figures. But standing in that closet on a Tuesday morning in April, staring at the empty space where my sapphire Dior dress should have been, I felt like I had nothing at all. Mrs. Blackwell, Carmen, our housekeeper, hovered in the doorway. "Mr. Blackwell called. He won't be home for dinner again tonight. Business meeting." I nodded, not trusting my voice. Another business meeting, like the one last week and the week before. "Thank you, Carmen," I finally managed. When she left, I sank onto the plush ottoman in the center of my closet, surrounded by beautiful things that suddenly seemed meaningless. I hadn't always been Emily Parker Blackwell, the perfect corporate wife, Once, I'd been just Emily Parker, an ambitious art curator with a promising career ahead of me. I'd met James Blackwell at a gallery opening in Chelsea 15 years ago. He wasn't the financial titan he would become, just a hungry young investment banker with penetrating eyes and a smile that made my heart race. "That Rothko speaks to you, man," he'd said, appearing beside me as I stood transfixed before a massive canvas of floating color. "It's actually a Joan Mitchell." I'd corrected him, amused. Instead of being embarrassed, he'd laughed. "Teach me," he'd said, and foolishly, I thought he meant it. Our whirlwind romance led to marriage within a year. I'd been so in love, so certain we were building something extraordinary together. When he asked me to give up my position at the gallery to support his skyrocketing career, I didn't hesitate. I would be his partner in every way, helping him entertain clients, creating the perfect home, being the perfect wife. What I didn't realize was that I was constructing my own beautiful prison, one Louboutin step at a time. The first crack appeared 3 years ago, a text message not meant for me. James dismissed it as a work colleague being inappropriate, and I chose to believe him. The second cracked lipstick on his collar that wasn't my shade. A client got too friendly at a dinner. He explained. Again, I chose to believe him, but the cracks kept coming, faster and deeper, until I couldn't ignore them anymore. I opened my laptop and checked our joint credit card statement again, the one James didn't know I could access. Another charge at La Perla, size 4. I was a size 8. A hotel booking in Miami when James was supposedly in Chicago. Restaurant charges for 2 at times when he told me he was working late. The evidence was mounting, but still I hesitated to confront him directly. Part of me, the insecure part that had never quite believed I deserved this life, wasn't ready to face the truth. I'd grown up solidly middle class in Connecticut, the daughter of a high school English teacher and a nurse. My love of art had been nurtured by museum trips and library books, not private collections and auction houses. When James swept me into his world of wealth and privilege, a small voice always whispered that I was an imposter, that someday I'd be found out and sent back where I belonged. Perhaps that day had come. My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. The screen showed Mom calling, and I felt a wave of relief. Olivia Stewart Parker was the strongest woman I knew, and right now, I desperately needed her strength. "Emily, are you all right, sweetheart? You sound like you've been crying." I hadn't realized I was crying until she mentioned it. "I'm fine, Mom, it's James." There was a pause. What has he done now? My mother had never fully warmed to James. She'd been polite but reserved at our wedding. And over the years, her questions about my abandoned career had become more pointed. She saw things in him that I'd been blind to. "I think he's having an affair." "Mom." Saying it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "Oh, Emily." Her voice softened. "Come home for a few days. Get some perspective." "I can't just leave." "Mom." "Why not? What's keeping you there? A man who doesn't respect you. A house full of things." Her words stung because they hit at my deepest fear that without James, without this life, I was nothing. I gave up everything for him. "Mom." "No, sweetheart," she said gently. "You set it aside. There's a difference, see? You can pick it back up anytime you choose." After we hung up, I sat in my beautiful prison, turning my mother's words over in my mind. Could I really pick up the pieces of the life I'd abandoned, the prestigious Paris exhibition I'd been offered, and declined at James's insistence, still haunted me sometimes. What would my life have been if I'd chosen differently? A text message interrupted my thoughts. Unknown number. "Your husband isn't working late tonight. Check the Regis, room 1542. My heart pounded as I stared at the screen. This was it, the moment of truth I'd been both dreading and needing. I changed into jeans and a simple blouse. Clothes James always said were too ordinary for his wife. I pulled my hair into a ponytail and grabbed my keys. As I rode the elevator down from our penthouse, I felt strangely calm. Whatever I found tonight would change everything. But perhaps everything needed to change. The St. Regis doorman didn't give me a second glance. I wasn't dressed like the usual clientele, but I walked with purpose, like I belonged. Inside, the opulent lobby gleamed with old-world luxury crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and the quiet hush of money and discretion. I took the elevator to the 15th floor, my calm facade beginning to crack as I approached room 1542. Standing outside the door, I could hear muffled laughter, James's distinctive chuckle, followed by a woman's voice. For a moment, I considered walking away, preserving the last shreds of my illusion, but I'd come too far. I knocked sharply. The laughter stopped abruptly. "Room service," I called, disguising my voice. Footsteps approached. The door swung open, and James stood there in his unbuttoned shirt, hair disheveled, holding a champagne glass. His expression transformed from annoyance to shock to fear in the span of seconds. "Emily," he stammered, "what are you—" I pushed past him into the suite, and there she was, lounging on the bed in a silk robe, young, beautiful, and completely unsurprised to see me. "Hello, Mrs. Blackwell," she said, raising her own champagne glass in a mock toast. I was wondering when we'd finally meet. Victoria Hayes, James's personal assistant of 8 months, the woman whose name appeared with increasing frequency on our credit card statements. She looked exactly like her social media photos, flawless skin, long dark hair, killer confidence. "Emily, this isn't—" James began. "Don't you dare say this isn't what it looks like." I cut him off, my voice deadly quiet. "I'm not a fool, James." Victoria laughed, a musical sound that grated on my nerves. "Well, that's debatable. You've been oblivious for quite some time." James shot her a warning look. "Victoria, please." I studied her, this woman who had inserted herself into my marriage. She was more than just beautiful, she was calculating. I could see it in her eyes. This wasn't just an affair. This was a strategic move. "How long?" I asked, looking between them. James ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing. "Emily, let's discuss this at home." "How long?" Victoria answered for him. 7 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days. But who's counting? She stood up, letting the robe fall open slightly to reveal expensive lingerie, the La Perla from our credit card. No doubt. Though James and I connected the moment we met, didn't we, darling? Something in her tone made me look closer at James. He wasn't just embarrassed at being caught. He was afraid. Not of me, but of her. "You need to leave, Emily," he said, not meeting my eyes. "I agree," he replied coolly. "But I'm not the only one who will be leaving. I want you out of the penthouse by tomorrow." James laughed, a harsh sound I'd never heard from him before. "You're confused about who owns what in our relationship. Emily, the penthouse is mine. The art is mine. The life you've grown accustomed to is mine." "We built it together," I countered, though my voice faltered. Victoria smirked. "Did you? From what James tells me, you've been decorative at best, a pretty accessory for business dinners." Her words cut deep because they echoed my own insecurities. I looked at James, waiting for him to defend me, to acknowledge the years I'd spent supporting his career. Instead, he checked his watch, the Patek Philippe I'd given him for our 10th anniversary. "I have an early meeting tomorrow. We'll discuss settlement terms through our lawyers." "Settlement terms," I repeated, the words not quite computing. "For the divorce. Emily," he said, as if explaining to a child. "You didn't think we'd stay married after this, did you?" The casual cruelty stunned me. This wasn't the man I'd married, or perhaps it was, and I'd been blind to it all along. "You know what's sad?" Victoria interjected. "He never even had to try hard to hide it. You were so desperate to believe in your perfect life that you ignored every sign." I turned to leave, unwilling to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break down. But at the door, I paused. "You think you've won," I said to Victoria. "But ask yourself why he's been so careless. Why he practically wanted me to catch him. Maybe you're not the prize you think you are. Maybe you're just convenient." Her smug expression faltered for a fraction of a second, enough to tell me I'd hit a nerve. As I walked out of the St. Regis into the cool night air, I felt something unexpected relief. The worst had happened, and I was still standing. The charade was over. My phone buzzed with a text from James. "Don't make this difficult, Emily. My lawyer will contact yours tomorrow." I deleted it without responding and hailed a cab. I gave the driver my mother's address in Connecticut. It was time to go home, not to the penthouse, but to the place where I was simply Emily Parker, a woman who had lost her way but might just find it again. What I didn't know then and was that James Blackwell's betrayal went far deeper than infidelity. And Victoria Hayes was just the beginning of a conspiracy that would soon unravel both their lives and mine. 3 days later, I returned to the penthouse with Morgan Williams beside me. I'd found her through a women's support network, a top-tier divorce attorney who specialized in high-net-worth cases with a history of spousal deception. "Remember," Morgan said as we rode the elevator up, "we're just here to collect your personal belongings. Don't engage with him if he's present." Morgan was in her mid-40s, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, her silver-streaked black hair cut in a sharp bob. She exuded confidence and a no-nonsense attitude that I desperately needed right now. "What if he's changed the locks?" I asked. "He can't legally lock you out of your marital home yet," she replied. "If he has, we'll have additional leverage." The elevator doors opened directly into our my foyer. The penthouse was silent. "Hello," I called out. "Nothing." "Let's be efficient," Morgan advised. "Focus on irreplaceable items, first family heirlooms, personal mementos, documents." I nodded and headed for the bedroom while Morgan began photographing the art collection evidence of marital assets. The bed had been slept in. James had been here recently. I quickly packed some clothes, jewelry that had been gifts from my parents, and photographs. In the bathroom, I found Victoria's makeup and toiletries already installed. The sight made me physically ill. It had been only 3 days, and she'd already moved in. I was about to leave when I noticed something. The painting above our bed had been moved slightly, revealing the edge of the wall safe behind it. James always kept it perfectly aligned. Either he'd been careless or someone else had accessed the safe and not noticed the painting's precise positioning. On impulse, I moved the painting aside and stared at the safe. James had always been careful never to let me see the combination. It was where he kept boring business documents, he'd claimed, but I knew James better than he thought. I tried his mother's birthday, nothing. His father's, nothing. Then I tried the date he made his first million a day. He celebrated every year with an expensive bottle of scotch. The safe clicked open. Inside were stacks of documents, several passports, in a thick manila envelope. I pulled out the passports first, all for James, but with different names. David Mercer, Richard Holloway, Jonathan Reed. My hands shook as I opened the manila envelope. Inside was a USB drive and a stack of photographs. I gasped when I saw them, pictures of James with Victoria going back nearly 2 years, long before she became his assistant. But they weren't alone in the photos. They were with men who looked like stereotypical gangsters, meeting in restaurants, on yachts, in private clubs. I pocketed the USB drive and quickly took photos of everything with my phone before replacing it all exactly as I'd found it. I realigned the painting precisely and continued packing as if nothing had happened. When I returned to the living room, Morgan was waiting. "Emily," she said quietly, "you need to see this." She handed me her tablet, showing an email she'd just received. It contained a single photo attachment: James and Victoria at a beach resort, arms around each other, kissing passionately. The date stamp showed it was from 6 months ago, when James was supposedly at a financial conference in Tokyo. "Someone sent this anonymously to my office email," Morgan explained. "The subject line was just your name." I stared at the photo, feeling oddly detached. "We have more than this," I said, and told her about what I'd found in the safe. Morgan's expression turned grave. "Emily, those fake passports are a federal offense. And if he's involved with the kind of people you're describing, He's not who I thought he was, I whispered. None of this is real. We need to be extremely careful, Morgan warned. Let's finish up and get out of here. We'll examine that USB drive somewhere secure. As we were preparing to leave, the elevator doors opened, and James walked in. He froze when he saw us. What are you doing here? He demanded. Emily is entitled to collect her personal belongings. Morgan responded smoothly. I'm Morgan Williams, Mrs. Blackwell's attorney. James's eyes narrowed. You've been busy, Emily. Did you enjoy your little detective work with the safe? My blood ran cold. I don't know what you're talking about. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. The painting was misaligned by exactly 3 millimeters. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Morgan stepped between us. Mr. Blackwell, any threats or intimidation will be noted and used in court. James smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. No threats, Sus, Williams. Just a friendly reminder to my wife that she's playing a game she doesn't understand. He turned to me. You have no idea what you're involved in, Emily. For your own safety, take the settlement offer my lawyer will send and disappear quietly. Is that a threat, James? I asked, finding my voice. It's advice from someone who once cared about you. He replied coldly. Take it or don't. But remember, you're not just fighting me, and I'm the least dangerous person in this equation. After we left, Morgan took me to her office. The modern building in Midtown housed her all-female law practice, specializing in complex divorces. Her corner office offered panoramic views of the city, but I barely noticed as we inserted the USB drive into her computer. What we found was beyond anything I could have imagined. Financial records showing hundreds of millions of dollars moving through shell companies, forged documents, evidence of insider trading on a massive scale, and most disturbing of all, emails discussing what appeared to be blackmail and money laundering operations. This is, my God, Emily, Morgan breathed. This goes way beyond divorce territory. This is criminal enterprise level stuff. I stared at the screen, trying to reconcile this evidence with the man I'd slept beside for 15 years. I had no idea, I whispered. All this time. Did you ever meet any of these people? Morgan asked, pointing to names in the emails. I shook my head, then paused. Wait, this one, Robert Harrison. He came to our house for dinner once. James introduced him as a business associate. Morgan made a note. We need help with this. This is beyond my expertise. She picked up her phone and dialed a number. Sarah, it's Morgan. I need your help with something sensitive. Can you come to my office? She glanced at me. Yes, it's big, potentially very big. While we waited, Morgan explained that Sarah Chen was an investigative journalist she'd worked with before someone trustworthy and discreet. James said I'm not just fighting him, I said, the full weight of his warning settling over me. What if he's right? What if I'm in over my head? Morgan took my hands in hers. Emily, listen to me. I don't just handle divorces. I help women rebuild their lives after men like James try to destroy them. I know because I've been there myself. She rolled up her sleeve to reveal a faint scar running the length of her forearm. My ex-husband was a respected surgeon. He was also abusive. When I tried to leave, he came at me with a scalpel. I gasped. I survived, she continued. I rebuilt, and I dedicated my life to helping other women do the same. You are not alone in this fight, Emily. There was a knock at the door, and a petite Asian woman with a sleek ponytail and alert eyes entered. Sarah Chen had the focused intensity of someone who uncovered secrets for a living. What have you got? She asked without preamble. Morgan gestured to her computer. Potentially the biggest financial fraud story of the decade, and possibly links to organized crime. Sarah's eyes widened as she scanned through the files. This is extraordinary, but also dangerous. She looked at me. You're James Blackwell's wife. I nodded. Did you know about any of this? No, I said firmly. I just found out my entire marriage has been a lie. Sarah studied me for a moment, then nodded. apparently satisfied with my sincerity. I've actually been investigating parts of this for almost 2 years. These shell companies, especially, but I could never connect all the deets. She pointed to a name on the screen. This man, Spencer Wade, is suspected of running a major money laundering operation for Russian oligarchs. If Blackwell is working with him, James said I'm not just fighting him, I repeated, that he's the least dangerous person involved. Sarah and Morgan exchanged a look. We need to be strategic about this, Sarah said finally. If we go public too soon, without enough protection in place, they'll come after Emily, Morgan finished. So what do? I asked. Sarah closed the laptop. We find allies, build a case, create insurance policies. She turned to me. There's one mom I've come across repeatedly in my investigation, someone who might have even more reason than you to want to expose James Blackwell. Who? I asked. Nathan Sterling, she replied, a financial prodigy who disappeared a decade ago after being accused of investment fraud. The accusations were later proven false, but Sterling had vanished by then. Some say he died. Others say he's been rebuilding under different identities, biding his time. My heart stopped. Nathan Sterling, I whispered. Both women looked at me in surprise. You know him, Sarah asked. I loved him, I said, my voice barely audible. Before James, in college, he was everything to me. Emily, Sarah said slowly. According to my sources, Nathan Sterling didn't just disappear. He was systematically destroyed by a former business partner who stole his investment, algorithms, and hundreds of millions in client funds. Let me guess, Morgan interjected. That partner was James Blackwell. Sarah nodded grimly. And if Sterling is still alive, he's been tracking Blackwell for years. He might be our best chance at bringing him down. But how do we find him? I asked. If he's been in hiding all this time. Sarah smiled for the first time. That's the interesting part. I don't think we need to find him. Based on some recent financial patterns I've been tracking, I think he's already found us. Or more specifically, he's found you, Emily. As if on cue, my phone pinged with a text message from an unknown number. The sapphire looks better on you than her. Central Park, Bethesda Fountain, 7 a.m. tomorrow. Come alone. N. I showed the phone to Sarah and Morgan, my hand trembling. It's him, I whispered. It has to be. The following morning dawned clear and cold, the kind of crisp April day that promised spring but delivered winter's final bite. I arrived at Bethesda Fountain at 6:45 a.m., despite Morgan and Sarah's concerns about meeting alone. We'll be nearby, Morgan had insisted, giving me a panic button disguised as a key fob. Press this if anything feels wrong. The park was quiet at this hour, a few joggers, dog walkers, and the occasional tourist. I sat on a bench facing the fountain, my hands wrapped around a paper coffee cup more for warmth than caffeine. Every approaching footstep made my heart race. At precisely 7 a.m., a man in a charcoal overcoat sat beside me. He didn't look at me directly, his face partially obscured by a scarf and sunglasses despite the early hour. The last time we were here, he said in a voice that had matured but was unmistakably familiar, you were sketching the angel statue for your art history final. I brought bagels and cream cheese, and you got charcoal all over your face when you tried to eat them. Tears sprang to my eyes. Only Nathan would remember that day, a perfect Sunday morning 17 years ago. Nathan, I whispered, you're alive. He finally turned to face me, removing his sunglasses. The boyish charm I remembered had been replaced by a hardened intensity. His once open expression, now guarded. But his eyes, those remarkable gray-green eyes, were the same. In a manner of speaking, he replied, Nathan Sterling officially died in a boating accident off the Amalfi Coast 10 years ago. The man sitting beside you has had many names since then. Sarah Chen told me what happened, I said. That James stole everything from you. A muscle twitched in Nathan's jaw. Not everything, but enough to destroy the life I'd built. He studied me carefully. Did you know, were you part of it? The question hurt, but I understood why he had to ask. No, I answered firmly. I just discovered that my entire marriage has been a lie. James isn't who I thought he was. Nathan seemed to accept this, nodding slightly. I've been watching James Blackwell for years, gathering evidence, tracking his operations. He's involved in something much bigger than you realize. Emily, the USB drive, I said. I found it in his safe. Money laundering, fake identities, connections to criminals. That's just the surface, Nathan replied. James is a key player in a massive international financial fraud operation. They manipulate markets, launder money for criminal organizations, and blackmail or eliminate anyone who threatens to expose them. I felt sick. And Victoria Hayes, where does she fit in? She's not just his mistress. She's his handler. His what? Victoria Hayes isn't who she claims to be either. Her real name is Katerina Volkov. She was placed in James's orbit 2 years ago to ensure his continued cooperation and to monitor his activities. They're lovers, yes, but it's a relationship built on mutual exploitation. My mind reeled. This is insane. Nathan, you're telling me my husband is some kind of financial criminal being managed by a Russian operative who's now living in my house and wearing my clothes. He almost smiled. When you put it that way, it does sound like a bad spy novel. But yes, that's essentially the situation. Why are you telling me this? Why now? Because they're planning something big, something that will happen within the next 2 weeks. I don't know exactly what, but it involves moving enormous sums of money and then disappearing. James and Victoria will vanish with new identities, leaving behind a financial catastrophe that will affect thousands of innocent people. And what do you want from me? I asked. I need your help to stop them. He said simply, you have access and knowledge that I don't. Together with Sarah Chen and your lawyer, we might be able to bring the whole operation down before they can execute their plan. I considered his words carefully. This goes way beyond my divorce now, doesn't it? Nathan nodded. This is about justice for both of us, and for everyone else they've hurt. It's dangerous, I said, not as a question, but as an acknowledgement. Extremely a fun way. Once they realize that what we're doing, they'll come after all of us. I thought about my life with James, 15 years of living a lie, of suppressing my own dreams, of being nothing more than a decorative accessory. I thought about the young, ambitious woman I'd been before I met him, and the broken shell I'd become. And I thought about Nathan, whose life had been stolen by the man I married. I'm in, I said, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. For the first time, Nathan really looked at me not as the girl he'd once loved or as James Blackwell's wife, but as a woman who had been wronged and was now choosing to fight back. I never stopped thinking about you. You know, he said quietly, even when I hated you for marrying him. You hated me, I asked, hurt despite everything. I thought you knew about what he'd done to me. I couldn't imagine you'd marry him otherwise. I shook my head. James told me you'd left the country after a family tragedy, that you'd moved to Europe and built a new life there. I tried to contact you, but every email bounced back. Nathan's expression darkened. He intercepted your emails. Of course he did. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. I sent you dozens of messages, trying to warn you about him. They all went unanswered. Eventually, I convinced myself you'd chosen his money and power over what we had. I would never, I whispered. What we had was real, Nathan. For a moment, the years fell away, and I could see the echo of the young man I'd loved so completely. But then his expression shuddered again. We should go, he said, standing abruptly. It's not safe to stay in one place too long. Sarah and your lawyer are waiting at the Boathouse Cafe. As we walked through the park, maintaining a careful distance that wouldn't suggest we were together, I felt a strange sense of déjà vu. Nathan and I had walked these same paths as college students, holding hands, planning our futures. Now we were virtual strangers, bound by betrayal and a shared enemy. Nathan, I said as we approached the cafe, why didn't you go to the authorities with what you knew about James? His laugh was bitter. I tried. 3 times. The first detective who took my case died in a mugging gone wrong. The second was suddenly transferred to Alaska. The third turned out to be on their payroll. He warned James I was still alive and coming for him. So you decided to handle it yourself. I concluded. I decided to become someone they couldn't touch. He corrected. To build my own power and resources until I could take them down without relying on a system they have already corrupted. We entered the cafe, where Sarah and Morgan had secured a private table in the corner. Morgan looked Nathan up and down with the careful assessment of someone used to reading people. So you're the ghost, she said. Nathan extended his hand. And you're the shark. I've heard about your courtroom victories, Ms. Williams. Sarah Chen was already pulling out her laptop. We don't have much time. If Emily's visit to the safe was noticed, they'll be accelerating their timetable. For the next hour, the four of us compared notes and evidence. Nathan had been tracking financial movements through a complex web of shell companies. Sarah had documented connections to known criminal figures. Morgan outlined the legal vulnerabilities in James's empire, and I provided intimate knowledge of James's habits, contacts, and properties. The key is to hit them from multiple angles simultaneously, Nathan explained. Law enforcement, financial regulators, media exposure, and civil litigation. If we coordinate properly, they won't be able to contain all the breaches at once. We need more concrete evidence, Sarah pointed out. Something irrefutable that ties James directly to the criminal activities. And we need to find out exactly what they're planning, Morgan added. If they're about to move large sums of money, we need to know when and how. Nathan turned to me. That's where you come in, Emily. You need to go back to James. Yes, What? I stared at him in disbelief. Not permanently, he clarified. But you need to make him think you're reconsidering the divorce. That you're willing to look the other way regarding Victoria if he'll agree to a more generous settlement. Morgan frowned. That's putting Emily at considerable risk. I know, Nathan acknowledged. But it's our best chance to gain the intelligence we need. I'll do it, I said before I could change my mind. James's ego will make him believe I still want him, that I'm willing to compromise just to maintain my lifestyle. Sarah looked concerned. You'll be walking into the lion's den. Emily, both James and Victoria are dangerous. I'm already in the lion's den, I replied. I just didn't know it until now. I turned to Nathan. But I need something from you first. Name it, he said. The truth, all of it, about you and James, about what really happened 10 years ago. No more secrets between us. Nathan hesitated, then nodded. You deserve that much, but not here. He wrote an address on a napkin and slid it to me. Meet me here tonight at 8. I'll tell you everything. As we prepared to leave, Sarah pulled me aside. There's something else you should know, she said quietly. In my investigation, I've come across others who were ruined by James. Women specifically. There's a support network, private, secure. They might be valuable allies. How many? I asked. At least 5 that I know of. Former business partners, investors, even an ex-girlfriend from before you. All women who trusted James Blackwell and lost everything. A new sense of purpose filled me. This wasn't just about my divorce anymore, or even about Nathan's revenge. This was about stopping a predator who had harmed countless people. That evening, I took a circuitous route to the address Nathan had given me, a nondescript apartment building in Brooklyn. Following his instructions, I checked for surveillance before entering, then took the service elevator to the top floor. The apartment was Spartan, but with stunning views of the Manhattan skyline. Nathan stood by the window, silhouetted against the glittering lights of the city that had been the backdrop to both our stories. I've been watching him build his empire from here, he said without turning around. 15 years of plotting, waiting, gathering evidence. 15 years, I repeated. the full weight of his patience and determination hitting me. All for revenge. Now he turned, his expression complex. It started as revenge. It became about justice, and then somewhere along the way, it became about redemption. He gestured to a simple wooden table where 2 glasses of wine waited. Sit, I promised you the truth. For the next 2 hours, Nathan told me everything. How he and James had met at a financial technology conference and formed a partnership. How Nathan's revolutionary trading algorithms had made them millions. How James had systematically stolen everything the technology, the client funds, Nathan's very identity, and then framed him for fraud when Nathan began to suspect. I was naive, Nathan admitted. I trusted him completely. By the time I realized what was happening, he had forged my signature on dozens of documents, transferred funds to accounts I didn't know existed, and planted evidence that made me look guilty. How did you escape? I asked. I didn't. At first, I was arrested, charged with financial crimes. While out on bail, there was an attempt on my life, a professional hit made to look like a mugging. I realized then that it wasn't just about the money for James. He wanted me gone permanently. Nathan took a sip of wine, his eyes distant with painful memories. I staged my death in Italy, assumed a new identity, and started over with nothing but the clothes on my back and a burning need to set things right. I worked menial jobs, saved every penny, made small investments that grew into larger ones. I created new algorithms, better than before. Within 5 years, I had made my first million again. Within 10, I had built a financial empire that dwarfed what James had stolen from me. And all this time, you were watching him, I said. Watching us. Nathan's expression softened with regret. I wanted to hate you, Emily. It would have been easier, but I couldn't. Did you ever think about contacting me directly, telling me the truth? Many times, but it was too dangerous for both of us. James had already tried to kill me once. If he suspected I was alive and in contact with you, I reached across the table and took his hand. It felt both familiar and strange, the connection of our past overlaid with the reality of who we had become. I need to know one more thing, I said. If I hadn't discovered James's betrayal on my own, would you have ever revealed yourself to me? Or would you have just taken him down and disappeared again? Nathan looked down at our joined hands. I don't know, he answered honestly. I've been alone for so long. Emily, I've had to be. Connecting with anyone meant putting them in danger. And now, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Now everything has changed, he replied, meeting my eyes. For the first time in 15 years, I can see a future beyond my revenge. But first, we have to survive what's coming. I knew he was right. Tomorrow, I would have to face James and Victoria, pretending to be a desperate woman willing to overlook betrayal to maintain her lifestyle. I would have to lie convincingly to people who had built their lives on deception. I'm scared, Etienne, I admitted. You should be, Nathan said. But remember, you're not the same woman who married James Blackwell. You're stronger than you know. And this time, you're not alone. As I prepared to leave, Nathan handed me a small device that looked like a compact mirror. It's a secure communication tool, he explained. Untraceable. If anything goes wrong, if you feel threatened in any way, open it and press the center. I'll come for you immediately. The intensity in his voice made me look up at him. In his eyes, I saw not just determination, but something else, a fierce protectiveness that made my heart race. Be careful, Emily, he said softly. I've already lost you once. I couldn't bear to lose you again. Before I could respond, he leaned forward and brushed his lips against my forehead, a gesture so tender it nearly broke me. Then he stepped back, his expression once again the controlled mask of a man who had survived by keeping his emotions in check. Tomorrow, he said, you become the greatest actress in New York. Everything depends on it. As I left his apartment and headed back into the night, I realized that I wasn't just fighting for justice or for my future. I was fighting for a second chance at life, at love, at becoming the woman I was always meant to be. And for the first time since discovering James's betrayal, I felt something unexpected hope. The morning light filtered through the blinds of my mother's guest bedroom, painting stripes across the childhood mementos she'd preserved, trophies from debate team competitions, a framed sketch of the Metropolitan Museum's Egyptian wing, my first serious art study, photos of a younger, more hopeful Emily Parker. I stared at one particular photo, me at 20, standing outside the Guggenheim with a lanky, dark-haired boy whose arm was draped casually around my shoulders. We were laughing at something now forgotten, our faces alight with the certainty that the world was ours to conquer. Nathan Sterling, my first real love. The memory of our conversation last night felt surreal in the morning light. Nathan alive, James a criminal, Victoria a handler for some international financial conspiracy. It sounded absurd, like the plot of a thriller novel rather than my actual life. My phone buzzed with a text from Morgan. Car will pick you up at 10. Remember the strategy. Be vulnerable but not desperate. Today I would return to the penthouse, to James, pretending I wanted reconciliation or at least a better settlement. The thought made me physically ill, but I knew it was necessary. We needed information only James or Victoria could provide. As I dressed, choosing a conservative blue dress that James had always approved of, my mother knocked and entered with a cup of coffee. You don't have to do this, Emily, Olivia said, her voice gentle but firm. There are other ways to fight. I took the coffee gratefully. Not this time, Mom. This goes beyond just my divorce now. She sat beside me on the bed, studying my face. At 65, Olivia Stewart Parker remained formidable, a retired English professor whose sharp mind had intimidated generations of students. Her silver hair was cut in a stylish bob, and her eyes missed nothing. You've changed, she observed. There's something different about you since yesterday. I sipped my coffee, wondering how much to tell her. I'd shared the basics, James's infidelity, the impending divorce, but not the criminal allegations or Nathan's resurrection. I've found some allies, he said carefully. People who are helping me stand up to James. It's more than that. Her gaze was penetrating. You remind me of yourself before James, that fire in your eyes. I haven't seen it in years. I set down my cup. Mom, if something happens to me, Emily. Her voice sharpened with alarm. No, listen, if something happens, there's a lawyer named Morgan Williams. Contact her. Tell her I sent you. She'll explain everything. My mother grasped my hands. What have you gotten involved in? The truth, I replied simply. And the truth is dangerous. She didn't press further, but when she hugged me goodbye at the door, she whispered, remember who you are, Emily, not who he tried to make you. The town car Morgan had arranged dropped me at the penthouse building at precisely 10:30 a.m. As the elevator ascended to the top floor, I rehearsed my approach one last time, vulnerable but dignified, willing to negotiate but not grovel, a woman who still loved her husband despite his betrayal. The doors opened directly into the foyer. I stepped out, calling softly. James Victoria appeared in the entrance to the living room, wearing silk loungewear that I recognized as mine. The presumption was so bold, it momentarily stole my breath. Well, well, she drawled. Look what the cat dragged in. I ignored her, moving past toward James's study. I'm here to see my husband. Her hand shot out, gripping my arm with surprising strength. He's not your husband anymore. Emily, not really. He's mine now. I looked pointedly at her hand until she released me. I understand why you'd be threatened by my presence, Victoria, but this is between James and me. Something flashed in her eyes, anger. Certainly, but also something else. Fear. Before I could analyze it further, James's voice called from his study. Let her in, Victoria. Victoria's perfect features arranged themselves into a mask of indifference. Of course, darling. I was just welcoming Emily back. James was seated behind his massive desk, the Manhattan skyline a suitably dramatic backdrop. He looked impeccable as always in a tailored charcoal suit, but there were new lines around his eyes. a tightness to his mouth. "This is unexpected," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "I assumed our next meeting would be with lawyers present." I took the visitor's chair, smoothing my dress with practiced poise. "I thought we should talk directly. 15 years shouldn't end with strangers negotiating our separation." James studied me, clearly suspicious of my change in tone. "What do you want, Emily?" I looked down, allowing vulnerability to show. "I've had time to think, to process everything. I'm angry and hurt, but I'm not naive. I know marriages evolve. Sometimes they accommodate changes." His eyebrows rose. "Accommodate? Are you suggesting—" "I'm suggesting that Victoria doesn't have to be the end of us," I said, forcing the words past my revulsion. "Many couples in our circle have arrangements." James leaned back, a slow smile spreading across his face. It was the smile that had once made my heart race. Now it made my skin crawl. "I admit, I'm surprised," he said, "but I didn't think you had this kind of flexibility." I gave a small shrug. "Perhaps you didn't know me as well as you thought. Or perhaps losing everything has clarified what matters to me." That last part, at least, was absolutely true. "And what does matter to you, Mom? Emily, we're down," he asked, his tone softening to the intimate register he used when he wanted something. "Security, respect, my place in our world." I met his gaze steadily. "I built this life with you, James. I don't want to start over at 42. He stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "And Victoria, how do you envision this arrangement working? She can be your mistress. That's already established. But I remain your wife publicly, legally. I maintain my lifestyle, my social position, and in return, I'm discreet and supportive, as I've always been." James turned, his expression calculating. "And the divorce proceedings, we can pause them while we negotiate terms." He returned to his desk, tapping his fingers thoughtfully on its polished surface. "I'll need to think about this. Discuss it with Victoria." I stood, careful to maintain my composure. "Of course, I just wanted you to know I'm open to discussion, to finding a solution that benefits us both." As I turned to leave, he called after me. "Emily, stay for lunch. Victoria made reservations at La Grenouille. We can continue our conversation there." It was an unexpected development and a perfect opportunity. "I'd like that," I replied. In the hallway, I nearly collided with Victoria, who had clearly been eavesdropping. Her face was a study in controlled fury. "Quite the performance," she hissed. "Do you really think he'll choose you over me?" I gave her a pitying smile. "I think James always chooses what's most advantageous for James. You should remember that." Her expression flickered, that same hint of fear I'd noticed earlier resurfacing. For a moment, Victoria Hayes or Katerina Volkov, if Nathan was correct, seemed almost human in her vulnerability. "You don't know what you're dealing with," she whispered. "Neither do you," I replied softly. "But you're beginning to suspect, aren't you?" I left her standing there, her perfect confidence visibly shaken. In the guest bathroom, I checked my appearance and activated the secure communication device Nathan had given me, typing quickly, "Lunch at La Grenouille, WOM, both J and V will be present." Opportunity to plant device. The response came almost immediately. "Perfect. Sarah will be there as server. Look for redhead with lotus tattoo on wrist. Device transferred during champagne service." I tucked the device back into my purse, my heart racing with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. The game was in motion. La Grenouille was a bastion of old-world French elegance, with its famous floral displays and discreet service. James had requested our usual table in the corner, which afforded both privacy and a view of the room important for a man who liked to see and be seen. Victoria was coldly polite throughout the meal, while James was unnervingly attentive, refilling my wine glass and asking about my mother with convincing concern. To anyone observing, we might have looked like a civilized trio working through a complex social situation. The reality couldn't have been more different. I've been thinking about your proposal, James said as our entrees arrived. It has certain merits. Victoria's fork paused halfway to her mouth. James, we discussed this. He gave her a warning look. Emily and I are exploring options. Victoria, that's all. I took a deliberate sip of wine. I'm simply being practical. A divorce would be messy, public, and costly for all of us. Indeed, James agreed, particularly with your recent discoveries. My pulse quickened. Discoveries. His smile was razor sharp. The safe, Emily. Did you think I wouldn't notice your little investigation? I set down my glass carefully. I was looking for our prenuptial agreement. I have a right to review it. And the USB drive you took, was that specified in our prenup as well? Victoria was watching our exchange with narrowed eyes. I could almost see her recalculating her position in real time. I took nothing from your safe, James. I lied smoothly. Perhaps you're confusing me with someone else who has access to our home. I glanced meaningfully at Victoria, whose cheeks flushed with anger. That's absurd, she snapped. I would never. Enough, James interrupted. This isn't the place. On cue, a server appeared with a champagne bucket. Compliments of the house, she announced. For such distinguished guests, she was young, with vibrant red hair tied back in a neat bun and a delicate lotus tattoo on her inner wrist. Sarah Chen, perfectly disguised. As she leaned over to pour James's glass, her tray tilted slightly, sending a napkin fluttering to the floor near my feet. I'm so sorry, madame, she apologized, bending to retrieve it. I felt a slight pressure against my ankle as she slipped something into my shoe. No harm done, I assured her. James, distracted by the champagne's label, noticed nothing. Victoria, however, was watching with unusual intensity. I don't recognize you, she said to Sarah. Are you new? Sarah smiled pleasantly. Yes, madame, just started last week. You look familiar, Victoria persisted. Have we met before? I don't believe so. Madame, I would remember someone as elegant as yourself. The flattery worked. Victoria preened slightly and lost interest, turning back to her meal. After Sarah departed, James raised his champagne flute. To civilize negotiations, he proposed. Victoria and I reluctantly clinked glasses with him. Speaking of negotiations, I ventured, I heard you're closing a major deal soon, something international. James's expression remained pleasant, but his eyes hardened. Where did you hear that? I shrugged. The financial world is small. James, people talk. They shouldn't, he replied, his tone light but warning. Not about unfinalized matters. When is it happening? I pressed. Perhaps we could celebrate afterward. A new beginning for all of us. Victoria set down her glass with unnecessary force. James doesn't discuss business at lunch, Emily. You should know that by now. But I'd seen it, the quick glance between them, the silent communication. Something was indeed happening soon. Something significant enough to make them both nervous. The rest of the lunch proceeded without incident, though the tension never fully dissipated. As we prepared to leave, James took my hand. I'll consider your proposal. Emily, you'll have my answer by tomorrow. Thank you, I said, squeezing his hand with what I hoped looked like affection. That's all I ask. Outside, James's driver was waiting with the Bentley. Can we drop you somewhere? James offered. Thank you, but I have some shopping to do. I declined. I could use the walk. As their car pulled away, I waited until it was out of sight before ducking into a nearby department store. In a private corner of the women's restroom, I retrieved the tiny device Sarah had slipped into my shoe, a state-of-the-art listening device disguised as a decorative pin. I affixed it to my purse strap, where it looked like an ordinary accessory. My phone buzzed with a text from Morgan. Come to the office immediately. Robert Harrison has contacted us. Robert Harrison, the name from James's emails, the business associate who had once come to dinner. This was a significant development. I hailed a taxi and headed to Morgan's office, my mind racing. The lunch had confirmed our suspicions. Something big was indeed imminent. Now we needed to discover exactly what it was and how to stop it. Morgan's office was buzzing with activity when I arrived. Sarah Chen was already there, now dressed in business attire with her natural black hair, all traces of her server disguise gone. They were huddled with a middle-aged man I didn't recognize balding, with wire-rimmed glasses and the nervous demeanor of someone accustomed to staying in the background. "Emily, this is Robert Harrison," Morgan introduced us, "former CFO of Blackwell Investments." Robert's handshake was damp with anxiety. "Miss Blackwell," he acknowledged, unable to meet my eyes. "I'm sorry about all this. It's Ms. Parker now, I corrected him. "And what exactly are you sorry about?" "Mr. Harrison, your complicity in my husband's crimes or the fact that you waited until now to come forward?" Morgan shot me a warning look, but Robert nodded as if accepting the rebuke. "Both," he admitted. "I should have spoken up years ago." We moved to Morgan's conference room, where Sarah set up recording equipment. "Before we begin," Morgan explained, "I want to be clear that this is being recorded for potential legal proceedings. Mr. Harrison has been granted conditional immunity in exchange for his complete cooperation." Robert nodded nervously. "I understand. Tell us about Operation Phoenix," Sarah prompted. Robert removed his glasses, polishing them anxiously. "It's their exit strategy, a massive financial maneuver designed to extract billions from various markets simultaneously, followed by the disappearance of all key players." When I asked, "5 days from now, Friday at market close," Morgan leaned forward. "And what exactly will happen?" "Multiple coordinated actions," Robert explained, his professional demeanor asserting itself as he discussed financial matters. "First, a series of large-scale short positions against specific sectors, technology, pharmaceuticals, and energy. Then, the release of fabricated but convincing evidence of catastrophic failures in key companies within those sectors. Market manipulation," Sarah clarified. "On an unprecedented scale," Robert confirmed. "The market panic will drive prices down, allowing them to cover their shorts for billions in profit. Meanwhile, client funds will be systematically drained through a complex network of offshore accounts." "How many clients are we talking about?" Morgan asked. "Thousands. High net worth individuals, pension funds, even some sovereign wealth funds. The total amount is close to $50 billion. The number was staggering. This wasn't just financial fraud, it was economic terrorism. And afterward, I asked, everyone disappears. New identities, new lives. They've been planning this for years. I thought about the multiple passports in James's safe, including James and Victoria. Robert nodded. "They're central to the operation. James manages the client relationships and fund movements. Victoria, or Katerina, as she's known in inner circles, is the connection to the international partners." "And where do you fit in, Mr. Harrison?" Morgan asked pointedly. He looked down, shame evident on his face. "I built the financial infrastructure, the shell companies, the offshore accounts, the mechanism for moving the money." "Why come forward now?" I pressed. "Because they're planning to eliminate me," he said quietly. "I know too much. Last week, I found evidence that my retirement package includes a fatal accident once the operation is complete." Sarah exchanged glances with Morgan. "We need to get this to Nathan immediately." I was about to agree when the conference room door opened, and a striking woman in her early 50s entered. She exuded confidence in a perfectly tailored suit, her dark hair streaked with dignified silver. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, her British accent crisp and authoritative. "Elizabeth Reynolds, former partner of James Blackwell." Morgan stood to greet her. "Ms. Reynolds, thank you for coming on such short notice." Elizabeth's shrewd gaze assessed each of us before settling on me. "So, you're the wife. I wondered what kind of woman would marry James after what he did to Nathan." Her words hit like a slap. "I didn't know," I said defensively. "James told me Nathan had moved to Europe." Her expression softened slightly. Of course he did. James Blackwell's greatest talent is constructing believable lies. She turned to Sarah. Are the others coming? They should be here shortly, Sarah confirmed. Others, I questioned. As if in answer, the door opened again, and two more women entered. The first was African American, around 50, with a regal bearing and penetrating eyes. The second was younger, perhaps 35, with the lean physique of an athlete and a no-nonsense expression. Patricia Washington, the older woman, introduced herself. Former investor in Sterling Blackwell Fund. Jennifer Zhao, said the younger woman. Former head of technology at Blackwell Innovations. I looked around the room in disbelief. You've all been hurt by James. Destroyed by him would be more accurate, Elizabeth corrected. Each of us trusted James Blackwell. Each of us paid dearly for that trust. Sarah explained. We've been building this network for months. Women who were specifically targeted by James because of their wealth, expertise, or connections. He has a pattern, Patricia added. Charm, gain trust, extract value, discard, sometimes with a veneer of legality, sometimes without. But the result is always the same. What did he take from you? I asked quietly. Elizabeth's jaw tightened. $20 million and my reputation in the financial industry. I was one of his first victims, after Nathan. My family's legacy, Patricia said. 5 generations of wealth, gone in 18 months of guaranteed investments that turned out to be elaborate Ponzi schemes. Jennifer's response was perhaps the most chilling. My research, 3 years of groundbreaking work on predictive algorithms. He stole it, patented it under his company, and then blacklisted me in the industry when I protested. I felt sick. James hadn't just betrayed me, he was a serial predator who had built his entire empire on the destruction of others. Why didn't any of you go to the authorities? I asked. The women exchanged knowing looks. I did, Jennifer said flatly. The detective investigating my case died in a suspicious car accident. My lawsuit was thrown out by a judge who later received a mysterious offshore payment, Elizabeth added. And my complaints to the SEC disappeared into a bureaucratic black hole, Patricia finished. The pattern was identical to what Nathan had described, the systematic corruption or elimination of anyone who threatened to expose James's crimes. So you formed your own network, I concluded. Sarah found us, Elizabeth explained, connected us, showed us that we weren't alone and that together we might succeed where individually we had failed. Morgan turned to Robert Harrison. Mr. Harrison's testimony changes everything. With his evidence and the device we planted today, we may finally have enough to bring James down before Operation Phoenix can be executed. Elizabeth looked skeptical. James has escaped justice for 15 years. What makes you think this time will be different? Because this time, we have Nathan Sterling, I said firmly, and we have all of you. The mention of Nathan's name sent a ripple through the room. For these women, he was more than just James's victim. He was a symbol of the justice they'd been denied. Is it true? Jennifer asked eagerly. Nathan Sterling is alive. Very much so, came a voice from the doorway. Nathan stood there, his presence immediately commanding attention. The women stared in disbelief, especially Elizabeth, who had known him before. My God, she whispered, it really is you. Nathan entered the room, nodding respectfully to each woman. Ms. Reynolds, Ms. Washington, Ms. Zhao. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. We thought you were dead, Patricia said, still looking stunned. That was the intention, Nathan replied. Both James's and later. Mine. He moved to the head of the conference table, and I was struck by the transformation in him. Gone was the haunted, isolated man I'd reconnected with in the park. In his place stood a leader focused, authoritative, and radiating quiet confidence. Robert, he acknowledged Harrison with a nod. Thank you for coming forward. I know the risk you're taking. Robert looked simultaneously terrified and relieved. They're going to kill me, Mr. Sterling, whether this works or not. Not if we move first, Nathan assured him. And with what you've provided, we can. He turned to address the entire group. Operation Phoenix is more than just a financial crime. It's an attack on the global economy, one that could trigger a recession affecting millions of innocent people. We have 5 days to stop it. How? Jennifer asked. James has connections everywhere: law enforcement, regulatory agencies, even judges. By striking simultaneously from multiple angles, Nathan explained. No single point of attack that could be corrupted or neutralized. He laid out the plan. Sarah would prepare a comprehensive expose to be published in major newspapers worldwide and at a precise moment. Morgan would file sealed legal actions to be opened simultaneously in multiple jurisdictions. Elizabeth, Patricia, and Jennifer would activate their own networks of influence. Robert would provide testimony to specific uncorrupted officials Nathan had identified, and I would continue my charade with James, gathering final, crucial intelligence. It's too dangerous for Emily, Morgan objected. James already suspects her of taking the USB drive, which is exactly why she needs to continue, Nathan countered. Her reconciliation attempt has created confusion. James's ego will make him believe she still wants him, despite everything. And what about Victoria? Sarah asked. She's clearly suspicious. Victoria is the wild card, Nathan admitted. Her loyalty is to her handlers, not to James. If she senses he's vulnerable, she might turn on him to save herself. I thought about the fear I'd glimpsed in Victoria's eyes. I think she already suspects something. There was a moment today. Then we use that, Nathan decided. Create more doubt, drive a wedge between them. The discussion continued for hours, each person's role and responsibility defined in meticulous detail. As the meeting concluded, Nathan asked me to stay behind. When we were alone, his professional demeanor softened. How are you holding up? I'm scared, I admitted. But also, strangely exhilarated. Does that make me a terrible person? He smiled, a real smile that reminded me of the boy I'd once loved. It makes you human. There's a certain thrill in fighting back after being victimized for so long. All those women, I said, shaking my head. How many others has he hurt that we don't know about? Too many, Nathan replied grimly. James Blackwell leaves destruction in his wake wherever he goes. I studied him in the fading afternoon light. You've changed since yesterday. You seem more whole, he suggested. Maybe I am. For 15 years, I've lived for one purpose: bringing James to justice. Now, with all of you involved, it feels like something larger than revenge, like redemption. The word hung between us, laden with meaning. Nathan, I began hesitantly. When this is over. His phone buzzed, interrupting the moment. His expression turned serious as he read the message. What is it? I asked. The listening device we planted is live. James and Victoria having a significant disagreement. He activated a small speaker on the conference table, and James's voice filled the room. Don't care what you think you saw. Emily knows nothing. She's desperate to maintain her lifestyle. That's all. Victoria's accented voice was sharp with suspicion. The server? James, I've seen her before. You're being paranoid. Am I? Then explain why your wife suddenly wants to reconcile after finding you with me. It makes no sense unless she's playing some kind of game. What game could she possibly be playing? Emily has no power here. Victoria's laugh was cold. That's always been your blind spot, James. Underestimating women. First Elizabeth Reynolds, then Patricia Washington, now your own wife. Don't mention those names, James snapped, genuine alarm in his voice. Why not afraid of ghosts? Or perhaps not all of them are ghosts. Perhaps some of them are very much alive and looking for revenge, like Nathan Sterling. A crash, as if something had been thrown. Nathan Sterling is dead. Are you certain there have been rumors? Whispers in certain circles about a financial phantom building an empire in the shadows. A man with a personal vendetta against you. Enough, James shouted. We're 5 days from the biggest operation of our careers. $50 billion and new lives waiting for us. I won't let paranoia derail everything now. My employers are concerned, James. They're sending someone to evaluate the situation. Your employers need to trust me. Everything is under control. Then why is Robert Harrison missing? A heavy silence followed. What do you mean, missing? James finally asked, his voice dangerously quiet. He didn't report in this morning. His apartment is empty. No sign of where he's gone. Another crash, louder this time. Find him, James roared. If he's compromised this operation. I've already sent people to look, Victoria interrupted coldly. But if he's gone to the authorities, he wouldn't dare. He's implicated as deeply as we are. Unless he's made a deal, immunity in exchange for testimony. The tension in James's voice was palpable. If that's the case, we accelerate the timeline, move everything up to Monday. That's impossible. The preparations make it possible, James ordered. And Victoria, have your people keep a closer eye on Emily. If she's not the desperate, clinging ex-wife she appears to be, I want to know exactly what she is. Well, the transmission ended, leaving Nathan and me staring at each other in alarm. Monday, I whispered. That's 3 days from now, not 5. Nathan was already reaching for his phone. We need to warn the others. The timeline has changed. As he made the call, a cold realization settled over me. James's last words had been a direct threat. If Victoria's people started watching me more closely, my connection to Nathan and the others would be discovered. And then none of us would be safe. The emergency gathering at Nathan's Brooklyn apartment that evening was tense. Everyone understood what the accelerated timeline meant. Less preparation, more risk, smaller margin for error. Monday gives us just 72 hours. Nathan explained to the assembled group, we need to compress our original plan without losing its effectiveness. My expose isn't ready, Sarah objected. I need at least 2 more days to verify all sources and prepare the package for publishers. And I haven't finished drafting the legal filings, Morgan added. Rushing this could create vulnerabilities James's lawyers will exploit. Nathan paced the sparse living room, thinking, we don't have a choice. If we wait until we're fully ready, Operation Phoenix will have already launched. Robert Harrison, who had been relocated to the apartment for his safety, looked increasingly panicked. They're going to find me. Victoria's people are everywhere. No one knows you're here, Elizabeth assured him, though her own expression was grim. I had been quiet, turning over a possibility in my mind. Finally, I spoke up. What if we don't try to stop Operation Phoenix? Everyone stared at me in confusion. What if instead, we let them believe it's proceeding as planned, but we're actually setting a trap? We know what they're going to do. We can be waiting for them. Nathan stopped pacing, considering. A sting operation. Exactly, I continued, warming to the idea. They'll be most vulnerable at the moment they execute their plan. All the key players will be actively committing crimes we can document in real time. That's actually brilliant, Zura said slowly. Instead of trying to prevent the crime, we catch them in the act. But the financial damage, Patricia began, can be prevented if we know exactly which companies they're targeting. I finished. Robert can identify them, and your financial contacts can be prepared without alerting James or his associates. Nathan was nodding now, his expression shifting from concern to calculated determination. It could work. Instead of rushing our original plan, we pivot to an entirely new approach. The room buzzed with renewed energy as the strategy took shape. Robert would provide the exact details of which companies were being targeted. Patricia and Elizabeth would quietly alert trusted contacts in the financial sector to prepare for the short attacks. Sarah would position her media expose to break the moment the operation began. Morgan would have law enforcement ready to move in. What about Emily? Jennifer asked. She's the most exposed. All eyes turned to me. I need to maintain my cover, I said firmly. Keep James believing I want reconciliation. It's too dangerous, Nathan objected. Victoria already suspects something, which is exactly why I need to stay close, I countered. To monitor their preparations and alert you to any changes. Morgan shook her head. Emily, if they discover your involvement, they'll kill me, I finished bluntly. I know, but they'll kill all of us if we don't stop them. At least this way, we have a chance. Nathan and I locked eyes across the room. A silent battle of wills. I could see his fear for me warring with his recognition of the strategic necessity. There must be another way, he insisted. There isn't, I replied softly, and you know it. The room fell silent as everyone recognized the truth in my words. Finally, Tom, Nathan gave a reluctant nod. 2 conditions, he said. First, you wear this at all times. He handed me what looked like an elegant watch. It has GPS tracking and an emergency signal. If you're in danger, press the crown 3 times rapidly. And the second condition, I asked, you don't take unnecessary risks. Your job is intelligence gathering only. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you get out immediately. I accepted both conditions, though I suspected that unnecessary risks was a matter of perspective. As the meeting continued with tactical details, Nathan pulled me aside into the small kitchen. I don't like this, Emily, he said quietly. James is unpredictable when cornered. I know him better than anyone, I reminded him. I lived with him for 15 years. Did you live with the persona he created for you? The question stung because it contained a painful truth. How well did I really know the man I'd married either way? I said. I'm our best chance of keeping tabs on their movements before Monday. Nathan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I remembered from our college days. When I started this crusade, it was just about me and James. Now I've pulled you all into danger. We chose this, Nathan, each of us. I placed my hand on his arm. And maybe this was always bigger than just you and James. Maybe this is about all the lives he's destroyed, all of us reclaiming our power together. He covered my hand with his own. When did you become so wise when I stopped being afraid? I answered honestly. When I realized I had nothing left to lose. His expression softened. You have plenty to lose. Emily, a future, a life after James. The unspoken question hung between us. Would that future include Nathan? Before I could respond, Sarah called us back to the main room. The final plans were being solidified, roles assigned, contingencies established. Emily will return to the penthouse tomorrow morning, Nathan announced. She'll maintain her cover story of seeking reconciliation while gathering intelligence on their final preparations. And if James rejects her reconciliation attempt, Jennifer asked, then I play the wounded wife and still keep as close as possible. I replied, either way, I stay in position until Monday. As the meeting concluded and people began to disperse, Elizabeth approached me privately. You're braver than I was, she said. When I discovered James's betrayal, I ran. I couldn't face him. It's not bravery, I admitted. It's necessity, and maybe a little bit of rage. She smiled grimly. Rage can be a powerful motivator. Just don't let it cloud your judgment. James Blackwell is at his most dangerous when he feels threatened. I'll remember that. One by one, the others departed until only Nathan, Robert, and I remained in the apartment. Robert would stay there for his safety, while Nathan would move to a secondary location of precaution in case Victoria's people managed to track me. As I prepared to leave, Nathan walked me to the door. Tomorrow morning, before you go to the penthouse, and he said, meet me at our spot in Central Park, 7 a.m. There's something I need to give you. I'll be there, I promised. He hesitated, then pulled me into a fierce embrace. Be careful, Emily, he whispered against my hair. Whatever happens, stay alive. I can't lose you again. I clung to him for a moment, drawing strength from his solidity. You won't, I vowed. But as I took a taxi back to my mother's house, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was making a promise I might not be able to keep. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly, the kind of spring day that couldn't decide whether to embrace the sun or retreat into winter's gloom. It matched my conflicted mood perfectly. I arrived at Bethesda Fountain at 6:45 a.m., the rain having temporarily subsided. The park was nearly empty, just a few dedicated joggers splashing through puddles and an old man feeding pigeons despite the dampness. Nathan materialized beside me so suddenly I almost jumped. "Sorry," he apologized. "Old habits." He looked tired, with shadows under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept, but his focus was sharp as ever. "Did you get any rest?" I asked. "Not much. I was going through Robert's information, identifying vulnerable points in James's plan." He handed me a small paper bag, coffee, and something else. Inside the bag was a standard to-go cup and a small velvet jewelry box. I opened it to find a stunning sapphire pendant on a delicate platinum chain. "Nathan, I can't accept. It's not just jewelry," he interrupted. "The sapphire contains a recording device far more sophisticated than what we planted yesterday. It will activate whenever James or Victoria are speaking within range." I lifted the necklace, admiring its craftsmanship. "It's beautiful." "I remembered blue was your favorite color," he said simply. The thoughtfulness of the gesture, even within its tactical purpose, touched me deeply. I turned and lifted my hair, offering him the clasp to secure around my neck. His fingers were warm against my skin as he fastened the necklace. When he finished, his hands lingered on my shoulders, and I leaned back slightly into his touch. "Emily," he began, his voice low and uncertain. I turned to face him. "Yes." For a moment, it seemed he might say something profound. Instead, he stepped back, professionalism reasserting itself. "The device has a 12-hour battery life. It will automatically transmit to our secure server." I nodded, hiding my disappointment. "I understand. If anything goes wrong, anything at all, press the watch crown 3 times." I finished for him. "I remember." We stood in awkward silence, so different from the easy companionship we'd once shared. 15 years and countless betrayals stood between us, creating a chasm neither of us quite knew how to bridge. "I should go," I finally said. "James is expecting me at 9. Nathan nodded, his expression carefully controlled. "We'll be monitoring everything. You won't be alone in there." As I turned to leave, he caught my hand. "Emily," his voice was raw with emotion, "when this is over, there's so much I want to say to you, so much I need to tell you." My heart raced at the intensity in his eyes. "Then let's make sure this ends right," I replied softly. "So we have that chance." He released my hand reluctantly, and I walked away through the morning mist, feeling his gaze follow me until I disappeared from view. The penthouse was unusually quiet when I arrived. Carmen, the housekeeper, informed me that James was in his study and Victoria had gone out early for a business meeting. I found James on the phone, his back to the door as he gazed out at the Manhattan skyline. He was speaking in low, urgent tones. "Don't care what it takes. Find Harrison by end of day or there will be consequences. Severe ones." He ended the call and turned, his expression shifting to a practiced echo when he saw me. "Emily, right on time." I moved into the room, conscious of the sapphire pendant against my skin. "Have you considered my proposal?" He gestured for me to sit. "I have. It has potential, but I need assurances." "What kind of assurances?" "That your sudden desire for reconciliation isn't motivated by something other than preserving your lifestyle." I met his gaze steadily. "What else would it be motivated by?" "James." He leaned forward, studying me with the intensity that had once made me feel special. Now it just made me feel like prey. "That's what I've been asking myself," he replied. "Why would my proud, dignified wife suddenly accept a mistress after 15 years of monogamy? Why would she return to a man who betrayed her?" I allowed vulnerability to show on my face because starting over at my age terrifies me, because I built this life with you. and I can't imagine it with anyone else. Or, he countered, because you found something in my safe that frightened you, something that made you think cooperating with me was safer than opposing me. My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. I told you, I didn't take anything from your safe. I was looking for our prenup. And yet, curiously, a USB drive containing sensitive information disappeared the same day. His smile remained, but his eyes had turned cold. A remarkable coincidence. Perhaps you misplaced it, I suggested. Or perhaps someone else took it. Victoria, you mean? He chuckled. Victoria knows better than to cross me. The pendant felt suddenly heavy against my chest, like a tangible representation of my deception. I had to redirect this conversation before it became dangerous. James, I didn't come here to argue about missing items or to cast suspicion on Victoria. I came because I want to salvage what we can of our marriage. If you're not interested— I didn't say that, he interrupted, his tone softening. In fact, I'm prepared to accept your proposal, with certain conditions. This was unexpected. I had anticipated more resistance, more suspicion. What conditions? I asked cautiously. First, you move back into the penthouse immediately. Today, my stomach dropped. This would make everything infinitely more complicated and dangerous. Second, he continued, you resume your social duties as my wife. I have an important business dinner tonight. Several key international partners will be attending. I expect you there, playing the perfect hostess. The business dinner had to be related to Operation Phoenix. This was actually a stroke of luck, an opportunity to gather crucial intelligence. And Victoria, I asked, will be present as my executive assistant. Nothing more in public. Our marriage will appear completely intact. I pretended to consider the conditions, though I already knew I had to accept them. That seems reasonable. One more thing, James added, a gesture of good faith on your part. What kind of gesture? He opened a drawer and removed a document. A revised post-nuptial agreement. Signing it will demonstrate your sincerity about our reconciliation. I took the document, scanning it quickly. The terms were outrageous. I would forfeit all claims to marital assets, all alimony rights, essentially walking away with nothing if we divorced in the future. This is extremely one-sided. James? He shrugged. Consider it insurance. If you're genuinely committed to our marriage, it will never come into effect. It was a test one I had to pass to maintain my cover. With reluctance that wasn't entirely feigned, I signed the document. James's smile widened as he took the signed agreement. Welcome home, darling. I forced myself to smile back, though inside I was screaming. I had just committed to spending the final 48 hours before Operation Phoenix, living under the same roof as James and Victoria directly in the lion's den. Now, James said, suddenly all business. About tonight's dinner. It's at Le Bernardin at 8. Wear something elegant but conservative. These are traditional men who appreciate a certain restraint in women. Of course, I agreed. Anything else I should know about these partners? Just be charming and unobtrusive. They're not interested in your opinions, only your decorative presence. The casual misogyny was so typical of James that I almost laughed. He truly believed I was nothing more than an accessory and that blindness would be his downfall. I'll have Carmen prepare the guest room for you, he added. Guest room? I questioned. His expression turned patronizing. Emily, let's not overplay this reconciliation. We both know it's an arrangement of convenience. I'll continue sleeping in the master with Victoria. The humiliation was intended to sting, to put me in my place. Instead, it fueled my determination. Of course, I replied smoothly. I understand completely. As I left his study to settle in, I touched the sapphire pendant lightly. I hoped Nathan and the others had heard everything. Tonight's dinner would be crucial, a gathering of the conspiracy's key players just before their master plan. What James didn't realize was that while he thought he was bringing his dutiful wife back under control, he was actually inviting his destruction into his home. and I was more than ready to deliver it. I stood before the full-length mirror in the guest bedroom, my bedroom now adjusting the sapphire pendant that nestled at my throat. Its dual purpose as both transmitter and symbol gave me courage. The navy blue Armani dress I'd chosen was elegant but understated, perfect for playing the role of decorative corporate wife one last time. A soft knock at the door interrupted my preparations. I opened it to find Victoria, a vision in crimson silk that hugged her perfect figure. "James sent me to make sure you're appropriate," she said, her gaze traveling critically over my appearance. "And am I asked with forced lightness. She circled me like a predator. "The dress is suitable, conservative, as requested." Her eyes fixed on my necklace. "But that's new. I don't recognize it." I touched the sapphire pendant. "It's not new. I've had it for years. James gave it to me for our 5th anniversary." Victoria's eyes narrowed in suspicion. "James has never had taste this good." "It was during his trying to impress me phase," replied with a small smile, before he realized I was already trapped. Something flickered in her expression, a flash of recognition, perhaps even empathy. She understood being trapped. "The car will be here in 20 minutes, she said, turning to leave. "Don't be late." "Victoria," I called after her. "The men tonight. Who are they? Exactly." She paused in the doorway. "People you don't want to disappoint." A beat of hesitation. "Wear your hair up. They prefer women with exposed necks. Makes them feel bumpany moment." With that strange piece of advice, she was gone. I secured my hair in an elegant chignon, revealing the vulnerable curve of my neck. Not because these men preferred it, but because I needed the sapphire pendant to have clear transmission. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We're receiving signal from the pendant. Team in position near Le Bernardin. Be careful." N. I deleted the message immediately and took a deep breath. Tonight would be crucial, the last gathering of conspirators before Operation Phoenix launched on Monday. Whatever I learned could make the difference between success and catastrophic failure. James was waiting in the foyer, impeccable in a custom Tom Ford suit. He gave me an appraising look. "Acceptable," he pronounced. "Remember, these men expect a certain deference. Speak only when spoken to." "Of course," I replied meekly. "I know my place." He missed the sarcasm entirely, nodding in satisfaction. "That's why this arrangement might work. Emily, you've always understood the value of appearances." Victoria joined us, and a strange tension crackled between them. Something had changed since this morning. They were barely looking at each other. The ride to Le Bernardin was silent and strained. I gazed out at the Manhattan skyline, wondering how many lives would be affected by what happened in the next 48 hours. Thousands of investors, countless employees of the targeted companies. The ripple effects would touch millions. We arrived at the restaurant precisely at 8. The maitre d' escorted us to a private dining room where 4 men were already waiting. I recognized one immediately from photos Sarah had shown me, Spencer Wade, the suspected money laundering mastermind. The others were unfamiliar, but their bearing screamed power and danger. "Gentlemen," James announced with practiced charm, "my wife, Emily, and my executive assistant, Victoria Hayes." The men rose with old-world courtesy that felt like a veneer over something predatory. The oldest of them, a silver-haired man with cold blue eyes, took my hand and brushed his lips against it. "Mrs. Blackwell, I'm Anton Volkov. We've heard much about you." Volkov, Victoria's real surname. According to Nathan, this had to be her handler, perhaps even her father. "All good things, I hope," I replied with a polite smile. "Of course," he answered, though his eyes said otherwise. "James speaks highly of your discretion." The emphasis on that last word sent a chill down my spine. Spencer Wade was next, his British accent crisp and his handshake perfunctory. The remaining 2 men introduced themselves as Takashi Yamamoto and Heinrich Müller, representatives of Asian and European financial interests. I gathered, throughout dinner, I played my part perfectly, smiling attentively, offering inconsequential comments when addressed, keeping wine glasses filled. All the while, I was hyper-aware of the sapphire pendant at my throat, capturing every word. The adjustments to the timeline are concerning, Volkov said after the main course had been cleared. Monday leaves little margin for error. The situation necessitated acceleration, James replied. Harrison's disappearance changed everything. Wade's expression darkened. Has he been located? Not yet, Victoria interjected. But we have people searching. He won't get far. And if he's already gone to the authorities, Yamamoto asked, his voice deceptively soft. James smiled confidently. Even if he has, who would believe him? A disgruntled ex-employee making wild accusations. Besides, by the time any investigation could begin, we'll all be enjoying our new lives in non-extradition countries. Mueller leaned forward. Let us review the sequence once more. I want absolute clarity. For the next 30 minutes, they discussed Operation Phoenix in explicit detail, the companies being targeted, the false information to be released, the exact timing of transactions, the offshore accounts where funds would be routed. It was all the evidence we needed, transmitted in real time to Nathan and the team. And the exit strategy, Volkov prompted. Private airfield in New Jersey, James explained. Multiple jets departing within minutes of each other. New identities, new accounts, clean breaks. What about loose ends? Wade asked pointedly. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. James cleared his throat. All loose ends will be eliminated before departure. Victoria's gaze flicked briefly to me, then away. I maintained my pleasant, vacuous smile, but my blood ran cold. I was one of those loose ends. Speaking of loose ends, Volkov said, staring directly at me. Mrs. Blackwell's sudden return to the fold strikes me as convenient. All eyes turned to me. I felt like a gazelle surrounded by lions. Emily understands the value of comfort, James replied smoothly. She's chosen security over scandal. Has she? Volkov's penetrating gaze didn't waver. Or perhaps she's chosen something else entirely. He reached across the table and, before I could react, grasped my pendant. Beautiful piece, sapphire tall. Yes, may I see it more closely? My heart pounded as he tugged the necklace, forcing me to lean forward. He examined the stone with expert eyes, turning it in the light. Exquisite craftsmanship, he remarked. You said James gave this to you for our 5th anniversary. I repeated, fighting to keep my voice steady. Interesting. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Because this particular setting is quite distinctive. Designed by a jeweler in Geneva who works exclusively for a very private clientele. I purchased a similar piece for my late wife. The trap was closing. I felt it in the sudden tension around the table. Perhaps it's a similar style, I suggested weakly. Perhaps, Volkov released the pendant. Or perhaps we should continue this conversation in a more private setting. James's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression shifting from controlled to alarmed. We need to leave. Now, he announced, standing abruptly. There's been a security breach. What kind of breach? Wade demanded. Someone accessed the primary server. The firewall was triggered. James was already signaling for the check. We need to move to the contingency location. As we hurriedly gathered our things, Volkov gripped my arm. Bring your wife. James, I'm not finished with our conversation. The ride to wherever we were going was tense and silent. James was on his phone continuously, speaking in clipped, coded phrases. Victoria sat rigidly beside him, occasionally glancing back at me in the rear seat. We pulled up to an anonymous office building in Midtown. Inside, we took a service elevator to a floor with no identifying markers, just a keypad-secured door that James opened with a 12-digit code. Beyond was a state-of-the-art command center with multiple workstations and wall-mounted screens displaying financial data and security feeds. Sweeper, James ordered as soon as we entered. 2 security men approached me. One ran an electronic wand over my body, while the other patted me down with impersonal efficiency. When the wand passed over my pendant, it emitted a high-pitched beep. "She's wearing a transmitter," the man announced. James's face contorted with rage. Before I could react, he ripped the necklace from my throat, crushing the sapphire under his heel. "You stupid, treacherous bitch," he snarled. "Who are you working with?" I said nothing, which earned me a stinging slap across the face. "James," Victoria protested, surprising everyone, including herself. "Stay out of this," he snapped. "Search her thoroughly. Phone, watch, everything." They found the GPS watch Nathan had given me, which James also destroyed. My purse was emptied, its contents scattered and examined. "Nothing else," the security man reported. "Who are you working with?" James demanded again. "The SEC, the FBI." I remained silent, tasting blood from my split lip. James grabbed my face roughly. "You have no idea what you've done, Emily. No idea who you're dealing with." "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," I replied, finding my voice at last. "A thief, a fraud, a man who's built his entire empire on the destruction of others." His eyes widened at my defiance. "Others like who?" "Like Nathan Sterling," I said, watching his face pale. "Yes, James, Nathan is alive, and he's coming for you." "Oh." James staggered back as if I'd physically struck him. "That's impossible. Nathan is dead." "Is he?" Volkov interrupted, his expression calculating. "I warned you about rumors. James, a financial phantom, building an empire in the shadows." James turned on Victoria. "You knew about this," she lifted her chin. "I suspected. I tried to tell you, but you wouldn't listen. You never listen." "We need to move up the timeline again," Wade interjected urgently. "If Sterling is involved and he has evidence, Sterling has it everything." I said, a reckless satisfaction flooding me. Every transaction, every fraud, every crime, and by now, it's in the hands of authorities across 3 continents. It was a bluff. Our plan was still to catch them in the act on Monday, but the effect was electrifying. The room erupted in panic and crosstalk. "Shut up," James roared, restoring momentary order. "We stick to the plan, the contingency plan." He turned to the security men. "Take her to the secure room. Don't let her out of your sight." As they dragged me away, I caught a final glimpse of Victoria's face. Unlike the others' expressions of panic or rage, hers showed something unexpected: calculation. The secure room was little more than a glorified closet with a cot, a toilet, and no windows. A classic holding cell. The door had an electronic lock, and a security camera monitored me from the corner. I sat on the cot, gingerly touching my swollen lip. James had revealed his true nature at last, the suave, controlled businessman giving way to the violent thug beneath. But I'd also seen fear in his eyes. The mention of Nathan had shaken him to his core. How long until Nathan realized my transmitter had gone dark? The GPS in the watch would have shown my location until it was destroyed. Would they be able to find this place? And even if they did, how would they get past the security? The hours crawled by. I tried to rest, knowing I needed to preserve my strength, but sleep was impossible. My mind raced with scenarios, most of them ending badly. Just before dawn, the electronic lock clicked. I tensed, preparing to defend myself if necessary. The door swung open to reveal Victoria, a finger pressed to her lips in warning. "Quietly," she whispered. "The camera feed is looped, but we don't have much time." I stared at her in disbelief. "Why would you help me?" "Because James is a fool who's going to get us all killed," she replied tersely. "And because I know when to switch sides to survive." She handed me a small phone. "Call Sterling. Tell him where we are and that Operation Phoenix has been moved up again. It's happening in 6 hours." I hesitated, suspecting a trap. "Why should I trust you?" "You shouldn't," she admitted. "But right now, I'm your only chance of getting out of here alive." She glanced nervously at her watch. 3 minutes before the security sweep. Make the call." I took the phone and dialed Nathan's number from memory. He answered on the first ring. "Who is this?" His voice was tense, wary. "It's me," I said softly. "I'm alive." "Emily," relief flooded his tone. "Where are you? Are you hurt?" "I'm at an office building in Midtown. I don't know the exact address, but it's their command center." I quickly relayed everything I'd learned about the accelerated timeline. "We'll find you, Dom," he promised. "The tracking data from your watch gave us a general area before it went dark." "Hold on, Emily. We're coming." "Be careful," I warned. "There's heavy security, and they're expecting you now." "Time's up," Victoria hissed, taking the phone and ending the call. "They're moving you in 30 minutes. To the airfield." "The airfield, why?" "James has decided to start the operation immediately and leave the country afterward. The rest of us will follow once it's complete." "And me?" Her expression turned grim. "You won't be making the trip, Emily. Volkov has convinced James that you're too dangerous to keep alive." Ice formed in my stomach. "They're going to kill me." "Yes." She pressed something into my hand, a small canister. "Pepper spray. It's not much, but it might buy you a few seconds if you need them." "Why are you doing this, Victoria? Or should I call you Katerina?" She flinched at the name. "Because I've spent 2 years playing James's devoted mistress, enduring his touch, his arrogance, his belief that I actually cared for him, all on my father's orders." "Volkov is your father," I said, not a question. "Yes, and he's even more ruthless than James." She straightened her shoulders. "I have to get back before I'm missed. When they come for you, look for an opportunity. Sterling and his people will be coming. But you need to stay alive until they get here." With that, she was gone, the door locking behind her. I clutched the pepper spray, a lifeline in what seemed like a hopeless situation. Victoria's help was unexpected, but I didn't fool myself that it was motivated by anything but self-preservation. She'd assessed the situation and determined that James's side was no longer the winning one. 20 minutes later, the door opened again. 2 armed security men entered. "Time to go," Mrs. Blackwell, one said, roughly pulling me to my feet. "Where are you taking me?" I asked, although I already knew. "For a ride," the other replied with a smirk that confirmed my worst fears. They escorted me through the command center, which was now a hive of frantic activity. Financial data streamed across screens as operators executed the complex transactions that would destabilize markets and drain billions from unsuspecting investors. James stood at the center, barking orders. He barely glanced at me as I was led past. "Take care of it," he told the security men. "No traces." Outside, a black SUV with tinted windows waited. The men shoved me into the back seat, one sliding in beside me while the other took the wheel. As we pulled away from the curb, I slipped my hand into my pocket, feeling the reassuring shape of the pepper spray. "Where exactly are we going?" I asked, trying to sound scared rather than calculating. "Don't worry about it, lady," the driver replied. "Just enjoy the scenery." We headed toward the Lincoln Tunnel, New Jersey, the airfield James had mentioned. My window of opportunity was closing rapidly. Once we reached the isolated airfield, my chances of survival would plummet. I needed to act while we were still in the city, where witnesses and help might be possible. We stopped at a red light in Hell's Kitchen. A delivery truck pulled alongside us, temporarily blocking the view from the left side. It was now or never. In one fluid motion, I sprayed the pepper spray directly into the eyes of the man beside me. He screamed, clawing at his face. I lunged across him, yanked open the door, and threw myself out onto the street. I hit the pavement hard, tearing my dress and skinning my palms and knees. Pain shot through my ankle, but adrenaline kept me moving. I scrambled to my feet and ran blindly, hearing shouts behind me. "Stop her!" the driver yelled. "She's getting away!" I darted down a side street, then another, running as fast as my injured ankle would allow. I had no idea where I was going, only that I needed to put distance between myself and the men pursuing me. After several blocks, I ducked into an all-night diner. The few patrons and the waitress looked up in surprise at my disheveled appearance. "Please," I gasped. "I need to use your phone. It's an emergency." The waitress, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, took in my torn dress and bleeding palms. "Honey, are you in trouble? Should I call the police?" "No police," I said quickly, not trusting which officers might be on James's payroll. "Just let me make a call, please." She handed me the diner's cordless phone. I dialed Nathan's number again, praying he would answer. "Hello." His voice was tense. "It's me again," I said, my voice breaking with relief. "I got away, but they're looking for me. I'm at a diner in Hell's Kitchen." I glanced around for the address and relayed it to him. "Stay there," he ordered. "I'm 10 minutes away. Morgan and Sarah are with me." "Hurry," I pleaded. "They're executing Operation Phoenix now, not in 6 hours, and they're planning to leave the country immediately after." "We know. Robert's information helped us prepare. The financial authorities have been alerted, and they're monitoring the transactions in real time. We've got them." "Emily." I sagged against the counter in exhaustion. "Thank God." "Are you hurt?" The concern in his voice warmed me despite everything. "Nothing serious. But Nathan, they were going to kill me." "I know," he said grimly. "And they'll pay for that too. Just hold on. I'm coming." The waitress brought me a cup of coffee and a damp cloth for my injuries, keeping a protective eye on the door. 10 agonizing minutes later, Nathan burst in, followed closely by Morgan and Sarah. The moment he saw me bruised, bleeding, but alive, his controlled facade crumbled. He crossed the diner in 3 long strides and pulled me into his arms. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered against my hair. I clung to him, finally allowing myself to feel the terror and exhaustion of the past hours. "They know everything, Nathan, about you, about us. They've accelerated the whole operation." "It doesn't matter," he said, drawing back to look at me. "The trap is already sprung. Federal agents are moving in on the command center as we speak. Others are at the airfield, waiting for James and the rest to arrive." Morgan approached, her expression a mixture of relief and professional assessment. "We need to get you somewhere safe. Emily, James still has people out there." As if to emphasize her point, a black SUV drove slowly past the diner's windows. "They're looking for me," said, ducking down instinctively. Nathan's jaw tightened. "Let's go. There's a back exit." We slipped out through the kitchen, the waitress wishing us good luck as we left. Nathan's car was waiting in the alley behind the diner. We piled in, Sarah taking the wheel while Nathan stayed in the back with me, his arm protectively around my shoulders. "Where are we going?" I asked as we pulled away. "The FBI's New York field office," Morgan replied from the passenger seat. "They've agreed to provide protection until all the key players are in custody." I leaned against Nathan, the events of the night catching up with me in a wave of bone-deep fatigue. "It's really over." Then, "Almost," he said, stroking my hair gently. "There's still the matter of the court case to resolve." I closed my eyes, remembering where this had all started in a courtroom, with Victoria wearing my blue Dior dress, thinking she had won. How distant that seemed now, how trivial compared to what had followed. "What about Victoria?" I asked suddenly. "She helped me escape. She gave me the pepper spray. Let me call you." Nathan and Morgan exchanged glances. "If she cooperates fully," Morgan said carefully, "her assistance will be taken into consideration. But she'll still face charges," I concluded. "Yes," Nathan confirmed. "She was a willing participant in financial crimes that affected thousands of people. One good deed doesn't erase that." I nodded, understanding but still conflicted. Victoria, or Katerina, was both villain and victim in her own way, manipulated by her father yet complicit in immense harm. As we drove through the awakening city, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "News is reporting major financial arrests." "Are you safe?" I typed back quickly. "I'm safe. We'll call soon. Love you." At the FBI field office, we were immediately escorted to a secure conference room. Several agents were already there, along with a familiar face, Elizabeth Reynolds. "Emily," she greeted me warmly. "Thank God you're all right. We've been monitoring everything." "What's happening with the operation?" I asked. A senior agent answered. "Operation Phoenix has been neutralized. We've frozen the targeted transactions and secured the offshore accounts. Most of the conspirators are already in custody, including Spencer Wade and Heinrich Mueller." "What about James and Volkov?" Nathan pressed. The agent's expression tightened. "Blackwell and Volkov managed to reach the airfield before our team could intercept them. They've taken off in a private jet." My heart sank. After everything, James was escaping justice. "However, the agent continued, we've coordinated with international authorities. Their flight plan was filed for Caracas, Venezuela non-extradition. But they won't be landing there." "Why not?" I asked. "Because the Venezuelan authorities, eager to improve relations with the U.S., have denied them landing permission. Every other country within their fuel range has done the same." A slow smile spread across Nathan's face. "They're in a flying prison." "Exactly, Bama," the agent confirmed. "They'll be forced to land eventually, and when they do, we'll be waiting." Relief washed over me in a dizzying wave. It was really, truly over. James and his conspirators would face justice. The victims would have their day in court. And I would have a chance to rebuild my life. Nathan took my hand, his thumb gently stroking my bruised knuckles. "Let's get those injuries looked at," he said softly. As a paramedic tended to my cuts and sprains, Nathan never left my side. When we were finally alone for a moment, I asked the question that had been hovering between us. "What happens now with us?" He looked down at our joined hands, then met my eyes with an intensity that took my breath away. "That depends on you, Emily. 15 years ago, we lost each other because of James Blackwell. I've spent most of that time focused on bringing him to justice. I never allowed myself to think beyond that goal." He paused, vulnerability replacing his usual controlled demeanor. "But now, for the first time, I can see a future, and I want you in it. If that's what you want too." My heart swelled with an emotion I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. "Hope. I think," I said carefully, "that we've both changed too much to simply pick up where we left off. We need to get to know each other again, as the people we are now." He nodded, a mixture of understanding and disappointment in his eyes. I squeezed his hand. "But I'd like to try. Nathan, I'd like to see if we can build something new together." His smile, a real smile that reached his eyes, was like the sun breaking through clouds. "I'd like that too," he said simply. Outside the window, dawn was breaking over New York City. It seemed fitting a new day, a new beginning. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be trials, testimonies, media scrutiny, the emotional aftermath of trauma and betrayal to work through. But for the first time in years, I was looking forward to the future rather than dreading it. I was no longer James Blackwell's wife or Nathan Sterling's long-lost love. I was Emily Parker, survivor, and I was ready to reclaim my life. The courtroom was packed to capacity, a stark contrast to the nearly empty room where my divorce proceedings had begun. Now, journalists filled the public gallery, their pens poised to record every word of the sensational trial that had captured international attention. James Blackwell sat at the defendant's table, his designer suit replaced by a prison jumpsuit, his once confident posture now slumped in defeat. Beside him, Anton Volkov maintained his aristocratic bearing despite similar circumstances. They didn't look at each other, former allies turned bitter enemies in the face of justice. Victoria, who had now reverted to her birth name, Katerina, was seated at a separate table. As part of her plea deal, she was testifying against her father and James. Her cooperation had reduced her potential sentence from decades to just a few years. I sat in the front row of the gallery, between Nathan and Morgan. Sarah was a few seats away, furiously taking notes for the book she was writing about the case. Elizabeth, Patricia, and Jennifer were also present, a united front of women who had finally seen their abuser face consequences. The prosecution calls Emily Parker to the stand, announced the lead federal prosecutor. A formidable woman named Danielle Washington, no relation to Patricia. As I walked to the witness box, I felt James's eyes on me for the first time since his capture. His gaze was a mixture of hatred and disbelief. He still couldn't comprehend how the wife he had dismissed as decorative had orchestrated his downfall. After being sworn in, I recounted the events that had led us here, discovering James's infidelity, finding the evidence in his safe, connecting with Nathan and the others, and the terrifying final hours when I'd nearly been killed. And at any point during your 15-year marriage, Danielle asked, did Mr. Blackwell inform you about his financial crimes or the true source of his wealth? No, I replied firmly. He compartmentalized his life completely. His criminal activities were kept separate from our marriage. Yet he used the proceeds of those crimes to fund your lifestyle. Correct. Yes, our penthouse, our art collection, our social status, it was all built on stolen money. Money taken from people like Nathan Sterling, Elizabeth Reynolds, and thousands of anonymous investors who trusted him. James's attorney attempted to paint me as a co-conspirator during cross-examination, suggesting I must have known about the source of our wealth. Mrs. Blackwell, Ms. Parker, I corrected him. He smiled condescendingly. Ms. Parker, you enjoyed a life of extraordinary luxury for 15 years. Designer clothes, exotic vacations, a multi-million-dollar art collection. Are you asking this court to believe you never questioned where that money came from? I met his gaze steadily. I believed it came from my husband's legitimate financial business. I believed he was a successful, ethical investment manager. That's what he told me, and I trusted him. That was my mistake. A convenient position now that the truth has been revealed. There was nothing convenient about having my entire life exposed as a lie, I replied, my voice strengthening. Nothing convenient about learning that my marriage, my home, my social circle, everything I thought defined me was built on fraud and theft. Nothing convenient about being marked for execution when I discovered the truth. The attorney had no effective response to that. After I was dismissed, Nathan was called to testify. He recounted how James had stolen his algorithms, his investment fund, and his identity before framing him for financial crimes. He explained his years in hiding, building evidence, and finally connecting with Sarah Chen and the network of James's victims. Throughout his testimony, James became increasingly agitated, whispering furiously to his attorney and shaking his head in denial. But the evidence was overwhelming, the paper trail damning, the testimony of multiple witnesses consistent and compelling. When Katerina took the stand, her testimony provided the final nails in James's coffin. She detailed the international conspiracy, her father's role as the connection to Russian oligarchs, and James's willing participation in money laundering, market manipulation, and fraud. James Blackwell was not a victim or a pawn, she stated clearly. He was an architect of this scheme, eager to expand his wealth and power regardless of who was hurt in the process. The trial continued for 3 weeks, but the outcome was never really in doubt. James Blackwell was convicted on 37 counts of fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Anton Volkov faced similar charges, with additional counts related to international financial crimes. The sentencing was scheduled for the following month, but legal experts predicted that neither man would ever walk free again. Outside the courthouse after the verdict, reporters swarmed around us. Morgan handled most of the questions with professional poise, while I stood between Nathan and Sarah, overwhelmed by the finality of it all. Ms. Parker, one reporter called out, how does it feel to know your ex-husband will spend the rest of his life in prison? I considered the question carefully. It's not about satisfaction. I finally replied, it's about justice, not just for me, but for everyone whose lives he damaged. I hope the verdict brings some measure of peace to all of his victims. And what about your relationship with Nathan Sterling? Another shouted. The romantic angle of this story has captivated the public. Nathan stepped forward protectively. Our personal relationship is private, he said firmly. What matters today is that justice has been served. We escaped to a waiting car, leaving the media frenzy behind. Morgan and Sarah bid us goodbye, heading to a press conference where they would address the legal and journalistic aspects of the case. "Are you all right?" Nathan asked as our car pulled away from the curb. I leaned back against the seat, suddenly exhausted. "Yes. No, I don't know." I turned to look at him. "It's finally over. Really over. The criminal case is," he agreed, "but the civil suits will continue for years, recovering assets, compensating victims. But James is going to prison. He can't hurt anyone else." Nathan reached for my hand, a gesture that had become natural over the past months. "No, he can't, and neither can anyone who enabled him." We'd been taking things slowly, as I'd suggested. Weekly dinners had evolved into long walks through the city, conversations that stretched late into the night, and a growing comfort with each other. We were learning who we had become during our 15 years apart, discovering the ways we'd changed and the core of who we were that remained the same. There had been no pressure, no expectations, just a gradual rediscovery that felt both familiar and thrillingly new. "Where to?" the driver asked, interrupting my thoughts. Nathan looked at me questioningly. "Your place? Or would you rather not be alone right now?" My place was a modest but charming apartment in Greenwich Village, purchased with a small portion of assets that had been determined to be legitimately mine. Most of James's empire had been seized for victim restitution, which I had fully supported. "Actually," well, I said, "could we go to the Met? I need beauty, art, something transcendent after all this ugliness." Nathan smiled. "The Met it is." We spent the afternoon wandering through the galleries, speaking little but drawing comfort from each other's presence. In the American wing, we paused before a Thomas Cole landscape, dramatic mountains and stormy skies giving way to distant sunlight. "I always loved this one," Nathan remarked. "The way the light breaks through after the storm. It reminds me of us," I said softly. "The darkness, but also the possibility of light ahead." He turned to me, his expression open and vulnerable in a way it rarely was in public. "Emily, these past months have been, I don't have words for what they've meant to me." "For me too," I admitted. "I know we agreed to take things slowly, to get to know each other again, and I've respected that. But I need to tell you something." He took both my hands in his. "I never stopped loving you. Not during those years when I thought you'd chosen James over me. Not during the darkest times when I was focused only on survival and revenge. Not even when I tried to convince myself that what I felt was just nostalgia for what might have been." My heart raced at his words. "Nathan, you don't need to say anything," he assured me quickly. "I just needed you to know. Whatever happens between us, whatever you decide you want or need, that's my truth." I looked up at this man who had lost everything and rebuilt himself from ashes, who had never lost his fundamental integrity despite every reason to become bitter and vengeful. This man who had once been the boy I loved, now tempered by hardship into someone even stronger, more compassionate, more worthy of admiration. "I love you too," I said simply. "I think maybe I always did, even when I thought you were gone forever. You were the standard against which I unconsciously measured James, and he always fell short. I just didn't let myself acknowledge it." Nathan's eyes widened, a mix of joy and disbelief washing over his features. "Emily, are you sure after everything that's happened, everything you've been through?" "I'm sure," I interrupted gently. "The past 3 months haven't just been about getting to know you again. They've been about getting to know myself, who I really am, what I really want. And what I want, Nathan Sterling, is a future with you in it." His smile was incandescent, heedless of the museum visitors around us. He pulled me into his arms and kissed me a kiss, 15 years in the making, full of lost time and new beginnings. When we finally separated, both slightly breathless, an elderly docent was giving us a disapproving look. We laughed, suddenly feeling like college students again. "Sorry," Nathan called to the docent. "We just got engaged." I raised an eyebrow at him. Did we? He grinned, unrepentant. A slight exaggeration, but I'm hoping it's a preview of coming attractions. As we left the museum hand in hand, stepping out into the golden late afternoon light, I felt a sense of rightness settle over me. The past would always be part of us, the betrayals, the losses, the years spent apart. But it no longer defined us or limited our future. I was Emily Parker, no longer defined by my relationship to James Blackwell. Nathan was Nathan Sterling, no longer defined by what James had stolen from him. Together, we were something new, something honest and real and full of possibility. And that blue Dior dress that Victoria had worn to court, thinking it symbolized her victory. It was evidence now, locked away in a federal storage facility, a reminder of how far I'd come and how much I'd survived. I didn't need it anymore. I was creating a new life, with a new wardrobe, one that reflected who I truly was, not who James Blackwell had wanted me to be. As Nathan hailed a taxi, I looked back at the magnificent facade of the Met, then up at the clear blue sky above. Whatever came next, I was ready for it, ready to live, ready to love, ready to be truly free. The rest of our story remained unwritten, and for the first time in many years, that felt like a blessing rather than a threat. 1 year later, the gallery was crowded with New York's art elite, glasses of champagne in hand as they moved from piece to piece. Parker Gallery's inaugural exhibition, Resurrection: Art After Loss, had drawn critical acclaim and impressive attendance. In the center of it all, I stood in a simple black dress, discussing a particularly striking abstract with a potential buyer. The piece-jagged lines of red and black resolving into a pattern of hidden beauty was one of my favorites in the collection. The artist created this after losing everything in a house fire, I explained. She said the process of making beauty from destruction saved her. The buyer, a tech entrepreneur with newly acquired wealth and genuine enthusiasm for art, nodded thoughtfully. It resonates. I'll take it. As he moved away to complete the purchase with my assistant, I felt a familiar presence at my side. Another sale, Nathan asked, offering me a fresh glass of water. The fourth tonight, I confirmed with satisfaction. The exhibition is a success. He gazed around the elegant space that had once been a neglected warehouse in Chelsea. The gallery is a success, and so is its founder. I smiled, still getting used to this new identity, Emily Parker, gallery owner and curator, champion of artists who transform trauma into creativity. The journey from corporate wife to independent businesswoman had been challenging but profoundly rewarding. Morgan just arrived, Nathan noted, nodding toward the door where our terrier friend was entering, resplendent in a crimson suit. And I think that's Sarah with her. The two women made their way through the crowd to join us. Sarah had indeed been with Morgan. They'd been dating for 6 months now, a development that had surprised everyone except Jennifer, who claimed she'd seen the chemistry from the beginning. "Congratulations, Emily," Morgan said warmly. "The reviews are spectacular." "And well-deserved," Sarah added. "This collection is extraordinary." We chatted about the exhibition and caught up on their news. Morgan's law practice was thriving, now specializing in helping women recover from financial abuse. Sarah's book about the Blackwell case had become a bestseller, and she was working on a documentary follow-up. "Any word on the appeals?" I asked quietly. Morgan's expression turned professional. "James's final appeal was denied last week. He's officially serving his full 30-year sentence." "And Volkov?" Nathan inquired. 25 years, no possibility of parole." Sarah replied. "Their empires are completely dismantled." I nodded, feeling not satisfaction but a sense of closure. "And Katerina?" 3 more years. Morgan said, she's cooperating with international investigations, which might reduce it further. She's also writing a memoir, apparently." The conversation shifted to happier topics: Elizabeth's new financial literacy foundation, Patricia's work with investment fraud victims, Jennifer's successful tech startup. As the evening progressed, I found myself drawn to a quiet corner of the gallery where a special piece hung slightly apart from the others, a small, luminous oil painting of Central Park's Bethesda fountain at dawn. The plaque beside it read simply, New Beginnings by E.P. It was the only piece in the exhibition that wasn't for sale, my first serious painting in 20 years, created during the months of healing after the trial. It's still my favorite, Nathan said, coming to stand beside me. Mine too. He slipped his arm around my waist, and I leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. On his left hand, a simple platinum band matched the one on mine. We'd been married in a quiet ceremony 3 months earlier, with only our closest friends and my mother in attendance. Happy, he asked. I considered the question, looking around at the gallery I'd created, the friends who had become family, the man who had found his way back to me against all odds. Beyond happy, I replied. Whole, as if to emphasize the point. My free hand drifted to my abdomen, still flat, but harboring a secret we'd only learned about a week ago. We hadn't told anyone yet, savoring the private joy of new life beginning. Nathan's hand covered mine, a gesture of protection and promise. We hadn't planned on starting a family so soon, but the unexpected gift felt right, another step in our shared journey of rebirth. Later, as the last guest departed and we prepared to lock up the gallery, I took a final look around at what I had built from the ashes of my former life. You know, I said thoughtfully, if James hadn't betrayed me, if I hadn't found Victoria wearing my dress, if you hadn't walked into that courtroom, none of this would exist. I'd still be living a beautiful lie. Nathan considered this. Maybe, or maybe the truth would have found another way to surface. Either way, I mused. I'm grateful for where we are now, despite everything it took to get here. He pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my forehead. As Oscar Wilde said, the truth is rarely pure and never simple, but it's still the truth. And that's what matters in the end. As we stepped out into the cool evening air, arm in arm, I knew he was right. The truth had set us free, free to build something real, something lasting, something entirely our own. And that was worth everything we had endured to find it.